Welcome back, fourth graders. Today we're going to continue with Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, chapter 37. And before we begin, I just would invite you to think about some of your predictions. What are you predicting is going to happen? I'm thinking like even bigger picture, and I'm thinking about the mission that Minley set out on, and I'm wondering, is she going to find, um, you know, is she going to be able to accomplish her dream of bringing her family fortune? What do you think? All right, so here we go with chapter 37. The next morning, Dafu shook Minley awake. "Wake up, sleepy," Davu said, pulling her up. "Come on, we want to show you something." "Yes," Afu said. "Hurry." Minley followed them out of the house and through the streets. It was almost as if there were a parade, for all the family were coming out of their houses and following. Minley hadn't realized Dafu's family was so large. There were aunts, uncles, cousins. The home behind the red gate doors was really a village of relatives. As Minley ran around through the open doors, she stopped and grinned, because there, waiting out on the stone ground, was Dragon. He was strong and smiling, sitting straight and alert. There was no daze in his eyes and no foul blackness on his body. In fact, except for 4 pale raised scars on his arm, he looked exactly as he did before they met the green tiger. "You're okay," Minley said as she hugged him. "Of course," Dragon said to her, grinning with happiness. "I told you that dragons heal quickly." "Yes, they do," Agong said from beside her. After the poison left him, his wounds healed almost immediately. Minley was so happy to see the dragon that she didn't notice that most of Dafu's family were surrounding them in awe. "A dragon," she heard one small boy whisper. "A real one." "We told you so," Dafu murmured to their cousins. "See?" "Unfortunately, friend dragon," Agong said loudly so that all could hear, "you are too large for us to show you proper hospitality inside our home." "That's okay. We should leave soon anyway," Minley said and turned to Dafu. "If you will still show us the way to Never-Ending Mountain." "Of course," they grinned, and Amma said, "Yes, you should leave as soon as you can. The sooner you leave, the sooner you can return to your parents. That would be for the best." Agong nodded when he heard Amma's words. "Breakfast, then," he said, "and then we will see our new friends off." So even though the rocky land was cold and windy, the family brought their breakfast of warm rice porridge out to eat. No one wanted to miss a moment of looking at a real dragon. Amma led a large iron pot rolled in on a rough wood platform by 2 of Dafu's uncles in front of the dragon. The pot was steaming and full, and Minley recognized it as the medicine tea. An aunt carried cups of the tea on 2 trays balanced on her shoulders, with a stick for anyone to take. Minley carefully reached for a cup. The fragrant aroma was too tempting to let pass. "We should not call this medicine," an uncle said. "It's too delicious, and now there is no more green tiger, there is no need for a cure." "Maybe we could call it well tea," Afu laughed, "since the tiger is down in the well." "No," Agong said. "We want to remember our friends, not our enemies." "Then we should call it Dragon Well Tea," Dafu said, "because it made the dragon well." The family all cheered at that, and there was a look of softness in Dragon's eyes that Minley had never seen before. He was unused to kindness, she realized. He had spent most of his years alone and trapped by his flightless body. Too soon, breakfast was over and Minley was packing her possessions into the yellow silk bag the king had given her, while Amma tied supplies onto the backs of Afu and Dafu. "Just in case," she said, slipping in their simple food of rice wrapped up in leaves and salted boiled eggs. "Bring Minley to Never-Ending Mountain and then come right home." I'm going to pause there. That just makes me think a lot. I mean, this family keeps bringing up Mon Ba, right? It's time for her to get back to her parents. So I'm struck at how free they are with Afu and Dafu to be able to take this journey and mission on their own. Um, I don't know. Maybe they think they proved themselves with the tiger. But that just strikes me as a little bit odd for these parents to be letting these kids that I think they said are younger than Minli lead her out on this mission. Agong put his hands on Minli's shoulders and said, "You're a brave girl, Minli, quick and clever, but you have been away from home too long. Go as quickly as you can." Amma wrapped her warm arms around Minli, then brought out a warm jacket. "For you," she said. "We made it while you were sleeping. Your dress is too thin for the mountain." The jacket was multicolored, made of large patches sewn together. Some dark blue, some deep purple, a few bright red. Minli smiled thankfully. Already the cold wind was chilling her, but she was hesitant to ask these people for anything, since they had already given her so much. As she put it on, she marveled at its warmth. The fabric looked like plain cotton, but she felt as warm as if she had put on a thick fur. "Let's go then," Dafu said, and the boy swung up his arm in excitement. It was only then that Minli noticed a large gash missing from his sleeve. She looked at the sleeve of her new coat and the bright red patch that made it, and she gasped. "Goodbye," Dafu's family waved. As they waved, Minli saw each of them had missing material in their sleeves. Her goodbyes froze in her throat as she realized her warm coat was made of pieces cut from the family's own clothing. "Come on," Afu said, her white hand slipping from her notched sleeve to pull at Minli. "Hurry up." "Yes," said Dragon. "We should go so the twins can return to their village as soon as possible." Minli nodded, and as she waved a grateful goodbye to the village, a sea of ruined sleeves fluttered back at her. What do you think about that? That everyone in that family took some fabric from their own clothing to make her something. Maybe what characteristics would you use to describe that? We'll continue with chapter 38. Interesting. Just from this image, I'm not quite sure what to predict. As Minli and Dragon followed Dafu up the harsh landscape, the wind blew wildly. But traveling was not difficult. Dragon carried them over any large cracks or openings. Minli had forgotten how enjoyable it was to travel with him, and Dafu, laughing with pure delight as they rode Dragon, looked like two ripe hawthorn berries. Their merriment and the brilliant red color of their clothes and of Dragon himself seemed to warm the cold landscape. It was only when Minli's hands poked out of her sleeves into the icy air that she realized how cold it really was. "It's not much farther," Afu said to them after they had walked some distance. "We should be able to see Never-Ending Mountain soon." "You've never seen the Old Man of the Moon, though?" Minli asked. "Has anyone?" Dafu shook their heads. "No one has ever seen him," Dafu said. "No one in the history of our family or village. Though we do know he is the one who moved our ancestors here," Afu said. "The Old Man of the Moon brought your ancestors here?" Minli asked. "How?" And here we go into the story of Dafu's ancestors. Even though our ancestors did their best to please the magistrate, they were not able to make him happy. One day, a neighbor rushed to our ancestor's home, his horse panting from running. "I have just returned from the city," the neighbor gasped. "I rushed all the way here to warn you. The magistrate is convinced the answer you sent him was a trick, and you are keeping the real secret from him. He is coming here to punish you. He plans to destroy your home and family. Run away while you can. There is not much time. His soldiers will be here tomorrow." Our ancestors cried with fear. The large family, the many sons and daughters, aunts and uncles, and children and grandchildren, could not help being scared. But Yi Yi, the great-grandfather and head of the family, raised his hand for attention. "It looks as if misfortune is coming," he said, "and there is nothing we can do. We will not run. The soldiers would easily find us, and the magistrate would be even more brutal, and I do not want to spend our last moments together in panicked flight." Yi Yi looked at the bright blue sky and sun shining on the mountain beyond their home. It was hard to imagine the coming trouble. "Little ones," he said to the children, "go fetch your favorite kites." Then Yi Yi turned to the adults. "Sons and daughters," he said, "prepare the finest picnic you can, with enough food and tea for all. We will not waste this time we have together. We will spend it, as we always have, in happiness." The family nodded at Yi Yi's wise words. Quickly they rushed to do as he asked. They brewed large pots of their best chrysanthemum tea and filled special baskets with golden cakes and custard tarts, boiled chicken, crispy pork, fluffy steamed buns, and tea-stained eggs. And their brilliant kites in the shape of bugs and butterflies were dragged out of storage and into the sun. I'm having just a quick aha. I didn't realize that this was a kite, but now I do. So just synthesizing. Yi Yi smiled at his family as they finished their task. He carried his favorite books of poetry, stories, and songs in a bag. "Come," he said, "let us climb the mountain." So together, with the tree leaves waving farewell, the family made their way up the mountain. They climbed high so the kites could fly without the trees getting in the way. When there was nothing between them and the sky, they stopped. And they had a delightful time. The children laughed as their kites soared in the wind. The women smiled as they sipped the tea, and the men happily ate the delicious treats. Yi Yi recited poetry that made the women sigh, told stories that made the men gasp, and sang songs that made all the children join in. But all too soon, the day was ending. The moon was already rising in the sky when children were told to wind the strings of their kites. "Why bring the kites down?" an older boy asked. "This will be the last time we'll be able to play with them." "Yes," a girl said. "Let them fly for as long as they can." So instead of bringing the kites in, they cut the strings and the kites were freed. A strong gust of wind burst from the sky. One by one, the butterflies and dragons disappeared as if flying home to the moon. As the kites vanished from sight, there was a sad sigh. No one spoke, but they all wished for an escape from tomorrow's tragedy. Quietly, the family packed their belongings and began to climb down the mountain. They walked a long time so that the moon rose overhead, and they began to shiver with cold. "Are we lost?" a child asked. "This does not look like the way home." "That's impossible," his mother told him. "How can we be lost? There is no other direction than down." "But the boy is right," Yi Yi said. "Look at the rock before us. We have climbed this mountain many times, yet I have never seen this rock or any rock of this type before." "And there are no trees," a young girl said. "Always there were trees below us, and now there is just more rock." "It's colder, too," another said. "Is it much too cold for an early autumn night?" "What has happened?" a woman asked. "I think," Yi Yi said slowly, "we are no longer on our mountain. Somehow we are on a different one." "How is that possible?" a man asked. "And why?" Before Yi Yi could open up his mouth to reply, one of the children shouted, "Home!" she cried. "Our home is right there." And it was their home. The dark red gate doors were wide open, allowing them to see light shining from the windows of their houses. Their chickens squawked a greeting, and their dogs jumped through the gate with cheerful barks. Our ancestors couldn't believe it. Dirty pots and pans that they had left in the morning were still in the wash basin. Mixed up shoes and hanging laundry were exactly where they were before. Even the book that Yi Yi had left was open on the same page. Yi Yi walked from room to room and house to house with the family following him like a parade. Finally, he found a slip of bright silk stuck in the hinges of the gate doors. He turned around to look at the family crowding about him. "It's a miracle," he said to them. "We have been moved here, beyond the magistrate's reach. We are saved." The family cheered, but could not help asking, "How? Who did this?" Yi Yi looked at the empty land around him and the dark blue sky with the moon above, and then at the thin strip of silk in his hand. "This silk is from one of the children's kites. The kites brought our wishes up to the old man of the moon, and he must have decided that our destinies lay here," Yi Yi said, and he motioned upward. "For there is only one other here with us tonight. It is only us and the moon." "And your family has been here ever since?" Dragon asked. Both children nodded. "For over 100 years, our family has lived on the mountain, and we keep growing. Sometimes we travel down the mountain. Sometimes people come to us. Anyone who visits is welcome to call our place home." "So," Minli began, but her words died away as Dafu pointed towards the horizon. Minli and Dragon followed his hand and finally saw what could only be Never-Ending Mountain, home of the Old Man of the Moon. I don't know about you, but I love these stories that are embedded throughout this novel. One of the things I was having a hard time with and I was thinking about was if I knew I was in danger, I just don't think I could sit there, right? But then I really appreciated what Yi Yi said. He said, "No, we will be happy. We will not be, we will be our normal selves." There's something powerful about that. How do you take a stand and make a change? But also keeping yourself and those around you happy. All right, chapter 39. What is that image making you predict this chapter is going to be about? Never-Ending Mountain was enormous, so large that it made Fruitless Mountain seem like a loose pebble. Minli could not see the tip or the bottom of it, as it seemed to grow out of a gorge so deep that the base must have been at the foundation of the earth. Minli felt as if she were on the edge of the world as she stared across the great gulf separating them from the Never-Ending Mountain. It stood before them like a piece of raw green stone, towering forever into the sky and disappearing into silver mist. "There it is," Dafu said. "Never-Ending Mountain." "I bet the Old Man of the Moon does live up there," Afu said. "The top of this mountain must reach the moon." "How do we get up there?" Minli asked. She was starting to feel dizzy from staring upwards so long. The dragon looked. "If I could fly," he said, "I'd be able to get us up there to see the Old Man of the Moon." "If you could fly," Afu laughed, "you would not need to see him." "But," Minli said, "it looks like flying is the only way up to see the Old Man of the Moon." "There's probably another way," Afu said. "Yes," Dafu said. "You probably just have to let the Old Man of the Moon know you'd like to come up." "How do we do that?" Dragon asked. "Send a message?" Minli looked up at the sky as Dragon and Dafu continued to talk. "Send a message. Send a message." Dragon's words echoed in Minli's ears, and she felt as if she were searching for a match to light a lantern. The wind gusted at her as if it were trying to tell her something. She watched Afu's braid fly in the air as she pulled it down. The cut pieces of her sleeve flapped like the tail of a kite. "I know," Minli said excitedly. "We will do it like your ancestors did." She quickly kneeled on the ground and reached in her traveling bag for the 2 borrowed lines. Dragon and the children looked at her curiously, as she waved the sheet of paper and the string before them. "We can fly a kite up to the old man of the moon," Minley exclaimed. "I'll make a kite of the 2 borrowed lines that's bound to get his attention." Da-Fu and the dragon grinned, and together they made the borrowed lines into a kite. They fastened the page from the Book of Fortune onto Minley's chopsticks and attached an end of the red cord to the kite. But as they tried to trim the thread, Afu thought it would look neater if it didn't have the end didn't dangle. They discovered that the borrowed line could not be cut. It is a string of destiny," Dragon said as he tried again without success to cut the thread with his claw. Each of them, in succession, had tried to break it. Da-Fu tried to snap it with his teeth. "It is reasonable to think it is unbreakable." "Well, we don't need to trim the string to make the kite," Minley said, "but we can't cut the kite free to go to the moon." "Just fly it until the string runs out," Da-Fu said. "Then let it go." Minley nodded. It made sense. As they gazed at the wound coil, she said, amused, "It won't take too long for the string to run out anyway. There's not a lot here." "I just hope there is enough for it to fly," Afu said. So with Da-Fu running, they began to fly the kite. As the kite rose higher and higher, Minley watched the coil of string in her hand. "Is the string running out yet?" each asked over and over again, but Minley shook her head every time. The thread seemed to endlessly unwind, even as the kite climbed upward. Becoming the size of a name chop mark, the string continued. Slowly, it disappeared from view with the thread scratching the darkening sky with a faint red line. "That is a magic string," Da-Fu said in an odd voice. "Of course," the dragon said suddenly. "It's a thread of destiny. If we are destined to see the old man of the moon, it will stretch to him." "You may be destined to meet him then," Avu said, impressed. However, as she looked at the sky turning to night, she frowned. "But we are not, Da-Fu. We should go back home. We have been gone too long. After the green tiger, we should try not to worry Amma and Aegon again so much." "Don't you have anything you'd like to ask the old man of the moon?" Minley asked. "You could change your fortune too." "No," Da-Fu said, laughing. "Why would we want to change our fortune?" The children ran down the mountain, their laughter melting into the air. Minley shook her head in confusion and waved goodbye. As Minley watched them turn into figures of shadows, seeming to dance toward their home and village, she thought of her own Ma and Ba waiting for her in her home far away. As the sky deepened like brewing tea, Minley and the dragon looked in silence at the red line reaching into the heavens. But just as the moon rose into the darkness, Minley felt a sudden jerk on the string. It began to strain and bend. "Something's happening!" she cried out. "Pull the kite in," Dragon said. "Bring it back." "Something has changed," Minley said as she strained and pulled. "It's heavy now." The dragon reached above Minley's head and grabbed the cord. Together they pulled and dragged. As they strained, Minley wondered if they were bringing down the moon itself. But there seemed to be no end to the string. As they wound up the thread, it seemed to get thicker and thicker. And when the string became the width of Minley's little finger, a strange clattering, like a wooden wind chime, filled the air. "Something has happened to the string," the dragon gasped between heaves. And something strange had happened. The thread, which was really now more like a thick silk rope, seemed to have divided itself into a long, strange web, reinforced with bamboo stalks. As the endless U-shape came toward them, Minley gasped. "The string," Minley panted. It's a bridge." Take a minute to stop and listen to your metacognition. What are some of the things you're thinking? Perhaps what are you predicting? What are you inferring? What are you wondering? What image do you have in your mind? How might the characters be feeling? Next time, we will continue with Chapter 40. Thanks, fourth graders.